What's up, everybody? It's been a while, a little bit over 2 months, I think. Right around almost exactly 2 months. Bears over Beers, presented by Second City Gridiron, is back on the air. I'm Ryan Drosty, and I am here with my guy, Brian Orenchuk. The girl dads are back to talk a little Chicago Bears football. Brian, there is no shortage of things to talk about tonight. How you doing?
No, there is not. Not the least of which my eldest daughter is has a friend that's got her phone. So tonight was the first time where there was like a FaceTime on the iPad phone chat. So it is coming, my man. You haven't necessarily experienced that, but we are not doing the phone thing. But that's breaking news as well. A lot of drama over here in this household. And but yeah, more good drama when it comes to the gridiron and what our team has been doing and has been up to. So I'm excited about that for sure.
Dude, the phone drama. My oldest daughter, who is 9, she had a friend who had a phone in kindergarten.
Yeah, dude,
I was like, that is insane. I'm not getting you a phone until you're in your mid-teens.
Yeah. There's tons of data that supports that too, but all these other parents are screwing it up for us, man.
Making it hard for us.
I want to have some conversations with these folks, but yeah, man, it is what it is.
Well, if you're in Chicago or you're in the upper Midwest like I am, it's been a cold day today. We had a blizzard here in Iowa where I'm at. So I was home from my job teaching school. I was here with my 3 kids, and it's been a long day. It's been a long day. I was looking forward to talking to you, Brian, and cracking open a beverage tonight. You guys, if you are joining us live in the chat here on YouTube, we would like it if you would drink an adult beverage with us. Let us know what you're drinking. I mean, you don't have to, but I'm going to peer pressure you a little bit to partake as we get into all of the Bears news tonight. Brian, what are you drinking?
I'm glad that you asked. So I am smack dab in the middle of a 30-day cleanse. So I'm cutting back on gluten, dairy, sugars, alcohol, coffee, a lot of different things. I will say coffee has been the hardest, but alcohol is tough, especially on a night like tonight. However, I got what's called Hop Splash. It is from Sierra Nevada Brewing Company, one of my favorite breweries. You can get it pretty much anywhere. And it's just made with water and hops. So it has a really strong hops flavor, but it's like a sparkling water for beer guys and gals. So I love it. Refreshing, has the hop taste. I've also found, Ryan, as I've gotten into my 40s, in my earlier days, I could pound, 6 beers during a game. These days, not so much. So you substitute one of these in between a real thing, and it makes the next day feel a lot better. So just some, alternative action going on here. Hop Splash from Sierra Nevada.
I have been picking up some NA beers lately. I've been with the was it Athletic?
Oh
Brewing.
I got one of those too. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've been drinking those during the week a lot and saving the real stuff for the weekend. But I did break out a real one tonight. So this one was one I picked up at the liquor store, just a single. Didn't buy a whole pack of it because it's pretty strong. This was right around Christmas time because it is a holiday imperial stout brewed with chocolate and Frango mint oil, 10.5%.
Man, that sounds good. And that's a tall boy. Is it 16 ounces?
Yes, it is. It's nice. This is from Hop Butcher, which is in the Chicagoland area. So it's a local beer in Chicago. I don't know that I'm going to drink this whole thing, Brian. I will probably save a little bit for my wife to give her when we are finished. But I have all 10.5% tonight. I don't know, man. I don't know if I'll make it through the show. I might pass out on my desk here. You'll be doing a solo show.
It's the off season for us too, folks.
So yeah, we got a few people in the chat here. Who we got? We got Antonio checking in. Antonio's been here with us a few times before. He says 27, never drank alcohol in my life, so he's drinking an iced coffee. Hey, I love iced coffee. I approve, Antonio. Good stuff.
I mean, I would argue that iced coffee at 7:45 at night is a little bit more risque than a beer. So you do your thing, Antonio. I'm digging it, man.
We got D Slick, Arizona. Sorry, no snowstorms here. Lucky man.
Are you sorry, D Slick?
Yeah.
Are
You're
you
not sorry?
No,
You're
sorry.
not sorry. This is a weird one though, because in March, we don't usually have snow days, but this random we didn't get that much snow, only a couple inches, but we've had 50 to 60 mile per hour winds. So I
Yeah,
mean, it's
it's
just
been
blowing
windy
all over
here
the
too.
place.
It's been
Yeah.
windy here too. Yeah, and we've had a brutal winter for us. I'm in Western North Carolina in the mountains of Asheville, and it's been teens and 20s, a lot more this in single digits more than normal. But no blizzard here, just some winds.
Yeah. Well, I will hopefully be onto the warm weather very, very soon. Uh Cheers. Check this one out. It's pretty
Oh,
dark.
nice, and it's got a little
Cheers, my
mint.
friend.
You got to taste that one. Yeah, cheers.
Oh yeah, this is really good. The mint is pretty strong.
I like mint. I don't know if I've had a stout with mint before. I'm really intrigued by that.
Yeah, there's a local brewery in Iowa where I'm at, called Single Speed, and they make one called Tip the Cow, which of course is an Iowa rural tradition, tipping over cows. I've never done that. I didn't grow up on a farm, but Tip the Cow, and they make one that's like mint flavored I get in the wintertime, and that's a pretty solid beer. So I was intrigued by this one, and I approve Hot Butcher, so good stuff. Pick it out if you're in the Midwest.
Nice.
Yeah. All right. So, hey, you guys, a lot has happened in the last 48 hours with our Chicago Bears. A lot's happened in the last 2 months. We haven't even done a show since our post Green Bay Packers win back in early January. We haven't done a show since Ben Johnson was hired. We haven't done a show, since all the coaching staff was filled out. I think I said on our last show, we'd be checking in periodically throughout the offseason. We would do one with the coaching hires. We would do one with free agency in the draft, of course. And so, we're playing catch up here. And I think, Brian, where we have to start, and I've seen some references to this in our chat tonight already, we got to start with the two new offensive linemen heading our way. Of course, yesterday it was announced that Jonah Jackson had been acquired from the LA Rams. Of course, he formerly played with the Detroit Lions when Ben Johnson was out there, both as the passing game coordinator and as the offensive coordinator. He was a Pro Bowler in 2021. Last year did not play very much, had a shoulder injury. But the Bears gave up a sixth round pick in this year's draft for Jonah Jackson. And, then of course, today, the bigger news, the Chicago Bears picked up guard Joe Thuney from the Chiefs. This is a man who is a 4-time Super Bowl champ. He's coming off an all-pro year, first team all-pro. He's a Pro Bowler. He's got that championship pedigree, like I said, big-time leadership skills. This one I did not see coming. I was excited as hell when I checked my phone this morning in the midst of the blizzard and saw it. Brian, I mean, it looks like we got two new starting guards for the Chicago Bears. We're probably going to be looking at Thuney on the left side and Jackson on the right side. I mean, give me your instant takes, your instant reaction to this big news.
So, if I'm being honest, at first glance yesterday when I heard the Jackson news, I wasn't thrilled. But as I've had more time to kind of look into it, and then obviously with today's news as well, I'm very excited. I think obviously Jonah Jackson's a little bit younger. He's 27, almost 20. I think he'll be 28 when the season starts. And he's played with Ben Johnson, which is huge. He knows the scheme. He's played with DeAndre Swift, and he's been a Pro Bowler. And people question his health, but first 2 years in the league, he started every game of the season, and he's played 13 and 12 games prior to this past year when he missed most of the season with different injuries. I think when you look at the injuries, they're not quite as chronic as like a Tevin Jenkins has had, which is the reason I think that we didn't re-sign him. But I'm stoked, man. I don't know if you saw, I'm sure you did, but these two ranked number 1 and number 2 in the entire league from pass block win rate with minimum of 50 pass block snaps, and with both over a 98% pass block win rate. So you're talking about two proven veterans, Thuney, who is remarkable, and all pro, current all pro, pedigree champion, been a Super Bowl champion with both Tom Brady and Mahomes. Um, he brings that to the team. Both of them are sound pass blockers to protect that pocket with for Caleb Williams. And in this scheme with that versatility, Tooney can also kick out to left tackle as he did in a pinch last year.
Mhm.
Jonah Jackson was at center a little bit last year for the Rams in a pinch. He hasn't played as much on the right side, but I agree with you. I think he'll slot in at right guard there and do just fine. But I'm really excited about these. We're strengthening that interior pocket, which has been a huge issue for us. And we've had some conversations in the den at WCG about how the Tooney acquisition is reminiscent of the Reuben Brown acquisition
Mm.
circa 2004, I think it was. And he had 2 great seasons with us, Pro Bowl seasons en route to a Super Bowl. So I think it's very possible that an older guard, interior lineman with more of a technician and cerebral skill set can continue to thrive. It's been rumored that we're going to extend him pretty quickly, which I think is going to help with our cap space this year and shore that up a little bit. But I'm stoked, man. I'm real excited. I'm still eager to see what they do in free agency and the draft. But these getting this done before free agency frenzy, before these guard price tags go way up, I think it was a good move. What do you think? You kind of in agreement?
Yeah, I was kind of right there with you with Jackson when that one came across because I mean, I hadn't looked at his past that much. Like I knew he had success with Detroit, but the first thing that came to mind was last year and the injury issues. And I'm thinking
Right,
like, oh, we've had so many injury issues, notably Tevin on the O line. I'm like, is that
right,
the type of guy we want to pick up?
right.
But as the day went on, I'm thinking, obviously this is a guy that our new head coach Ben Johnson would wanted and probably advocated for, and I feel like if you were a person who really wanted Ben Johnson to be the Chicago Bears coach, as I did,
Yep,
we talked about it on our last show. I gotta put the trust in his hands that this
right,
is the guy. And like you said, the injuries maybe aren't as big of a concern as made out. You look at last year, and then you're kind of flabbergasted, like why would they take this guy? But
right.
as you said earlier in his career, it wasn't as big of an issue. So, I mean, yeah, he had a lot of success with Detroit, 2021 Pro Bowl. He got that big contract from the Rams just last year. He
Yep,
was 28 years old,
yeah,
so he's got a lot of years left. And then with Tooney, yeah, 32. 32 is not that old for an O lineman. You got you guys playing well into their 30s at a high level in the NFL. I mean, if they can get a couple of good seasons out of him, if anything, just as a bridge to maybe a guard that they draft that they can learn from him. And just I think the leadership qualities that this guy is gonna bring to the room. They didn't really have that at all, last year with the O line. You got a lot of young guys or guys playing who have bounced around a little bit but not had a lot of success. I mean, this is a guy who has played with 2 of the greatest coaches to ever coach in the NFL. Guy has 4 Super Bowl rings. Like this is a guy who can command the room. And I mean, I think, especially with Caleb learning and him needing to have that trust in who's in front of him so he can have more success in the pocket this year. That one for sure. Tooney is a home run trade. I mean, the fact that they gave up next year's 4th round for him, I think is a steal, absolute steal for a guy with this kind of pedigree. You're looking at a guy who I think who was it that put this out there? I think I saw this from Kevin Fishbane. The last time the Chicago Bears had a first team all pro guard was 1959.
Oh yeah, that's
Stan
nuts.
Jones, right guard, back in 1959. I haven't had a first team all pro guard. I've had some second team, I believe, but not a first team all pro guard since 1959. I mean, that's incredible. So yeah, I mean, I'm very, very excited looking at what he brings to the table. 3-time Pro Bowler, 2-time first team all pro, 4-time Super Bowl champ. Home run, as far as I'm concerned.
Yep, I fully agree with that. And I think going back to the Jonah thing, I would like to assume, although I guess we can never really be fully sure and confident, but I'd like to assume that they've got some medical understanding of him and his current status before they, made that deal.
Yeah.
Um, I would like to hope that's the case, and if so, like you said, trust Ben Johnson. If Ben Johnson wants him, I want him. And he will bring some of that nasty streak that we loved in Tevin, along with the familiarity of the offense. So I think this goes a long way. And honestly, and this kind of goes into maybe what we're going to talk about later with the combine and the draft. Having these two veteran, knowledgeable presence guards on both sides of the center, it maybe opens up some options for us there as well. But yeah, I'm stoked about this and looking forward to seeing how we capitalize and add to it next week.
Yeah, I'm looking through Jonah Jackson's Pro Football Reference page right now, and if you look at penalties committed by him, there are very few. In fact, his 2021 Pro Bowl year, 0 penalties that he was responsible for. 2020 started 16 games, no holds, 3 false starts. We had, like I said, none in 21. 2022, he started 13 games, 2 holds, all 2 holds the entire season. And then 2023, 12 games started with Detroit, 2 holds. So he doesn't commit many penalties. I mean, that's really good to see too. And so, like, yeah, I mean, like you said, he's a guy who played a lot before last year. So hopefully the injury bug doesn't bite again, at least not in a big way like it did last year. Cause yeah, he
Right.
started 4 games last year, but I mean, otherwise it was 16, 16, 13, 12. So
Right. Exactly. So I'm liking
yeah.
that.
So yeah, I mean, looking at some of the stats then for Tooney, I mean, we could just toot his horn all night long. But I mean, our guy Jacob Infante, who is of course a rotating member here of Bears Over Beers, he had some of his stats out there right away this morning after the trade came through. He was 12th out of 135 guards in his PFF grade this year, 5th in the NFL in his pass blocking grade at PFF, 1 penalty on 1,115 snaps, 0 sacks allowed last year. It's good stuff, man. I mean, look at the issues we've been dealing with on the Chicago Bears from the offensive line. I mean, this dude, he balls out. I mean, he's got the pedigree. This is going to change the entire narrative of this O-line. He's going to help out from so many different perspectives beyond just as a player. But again, like I was saying, what he brings to that O-line room, what he brings to that unit, how he can command the rest of the guys and they can learn from him. And I think it's going to be a real turning point for the Bears O-line moving forward.
Oh, absolutely. And the fact that, he is played with Tom Brady and Patrick Mahomes. And so for Caleb Williams to really, glean from a veteran all-pro champion like Tooney and what it takes to be that caliber of quarterback and leader of the team. Again, I think it's going to be invaluable. I agree. It's going to be huge, not just for that O-line unit, but for our whole team, honestly.
Yeah. So some of the chats in here, they're looking at, who's going to be left tackle. What are we looking at as far as the Bears O-line goes right now? And, of course, I don't think the Bears are done making moves here. We got free agency coming, begin negotiating next week. We got the draft coming up. But I mean, right now, you're looking at Braxton at left tackle, Tooney at left guard, center. We're going to talk about that here in a second because I think some moves are going to be made, and you've got some great insight on that, Brian, from our text earlier today. But then right guard, Jackson, and then Darnell at right tackle. So I mean, that to me, that is a massive, massive improvement. So when you look at the center position, Brian, there's some names out there in free agency. Of course, they could look to the draft too, or maybe both. A lot of people talking about Drew Dalman from the Falcons as a possibility. He's the number 1 center on the market. He's going to command some money. Brian, give me your thoughts on what the Bears should do when it comes to the center position.
Yeah, so what they should do and what I think might be done, maybe are 2 different things. Like what I want them to do and what, hopefully it's the same thing, but we're often wrong. And you look at a couple factors. I think it's important to note the ages of the guys we just brought in. Jonah Jackson, he's going to be 28. Obviously that's not old. Tooney's going to be 33 this year, I believe, and that's a little bit older. And we want to get somebody that can kind of grow with Caleb, ideally. So, and then you look at the combine and the draft coming up, and who might be plug and play. And I'm not sure there is a center that can be plug and play. Um, Honestly, in this draft, there's maybe that Gray Zabel guy from North Dakota State could do it, but he plays all over the line. I just think he's a smart guy. But one of the things I love about what Poles and Ben Johnson are doing in their approach is they're setting themselves up to not be pigeonholed into what they must do. That they're not going to get desperate. They're not going to be reaching for subpar value, suboptimal value. So I expect them to address it in free agency next week. And a lot of talk has been discussed back and forth about Drew Dahlman, and I think he's a great young player, but he doesn't actually fit the profile for what Ben Johnson has had over in Detroit with Frank Ragnow. Frank Ragnow is a 6'5", 310 plus guy, 33 plus inch arms, almost 10-inch hands. And Drew Dahlman, 6'3", under 300 pounds. And his arms are not quite as long. I don't have measurements here. He's more of a outside zone type of small athletic, similar to a Coleman Shelton, although he's a little bit more stout. Coleman Shelton was 6'5", like 290. Dahlman 6'3", 295. Maybe 300, a little over 300 now. So he's a little more stout. I think he has room to grow as far as his weight and skill set. But from a schematic and a center mold from Ben Johnson, Ryan Kelly's the guy that I would expect to be a better fit here. He's the guy from Alabama. He's been with the Colts his whole career. Drafted in 2016. He's in his 30s too, but he's 6'4", over 310 pounds, just like Ragnow. Over 33-inch arms, just under a 10-inch hand. Very, very similar in skill set to a Frank Ragnow. So I'm curious to see if they go that route and maybe draft a replacement down the road as opposed to Drew Dahlman. Now, you asked, what would I do? I would go after Dahlman. Go after the young guy who's top 5 run blocker right now. You're sitting him next to these two veterans who know the system. I think he can succeed in that system, and he's younger. And so I would go that route, go the younger option that can grow with Caleb. But I wouldn't be surprised if they opt for Ryan Kelly and then maybe draft somebody that can be the future there. But I do think you need to get one of those two guys in free agency to set you up to not be desperate and reach for a center in the draft. That's what I think.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I expect them to go after Dahlman. I don't know how willing we're going to see Poles to pay top dollar at the position, just given the draft picks and everything. And, he's going to command a lot of money because, he is ranked, considerably higher, I think, by scouts. I think there's quite a bit of a fall off. Kelly's pretty good too, but he's older. I like the angle with Kelly though, because it'd be, similar to Tooney, where you can have him help bring along a younger player, draft a center, and then within a few years, hopefully, they would be ready to step in, if not step in during a pinch, unforeseen injury or something.
Right.
But yeah, I think after Kelly, it's a pretty big fall off on who's available at center. Dahlman number 1, Kelly, and then all the rankings I'm looking at, Bozeman is up there. He's 30 from the Chargers. But everything I've seen about Bozeman is he's not great in pass protection, solid run blocker. And I don't know if I want a guy who struggles in pass protection as the center in front of Caleb.
Well, that's what they say the struggle is with Dahlman.
Yeah,
is the pass protection. So, and that's kind of the issue that I'm thinking. And if any indication with that, the pass blocking prowess of these two guards we just signed, I'm starting to lean more towards a Ryan Kelly option, to be honest with you right now. But I'm with you. And then right there is Coleman Shelton. He's right there too. And I feel like that was not good enough. Now, granted, I do think Shelton would be better with those two guards next to him,
Hmm.
but I think we need to raise the level of center play. And Ben Johnson has even gone as far as to say, to really support Caleb Williams, we need to get him a strong center. So I feel like they're going to go that route. I'm
Yeah.
just fascinated to see which one they go.
Yeah.
Dahlman or Kelly. But like I said, I think that's going to one of those top options is going to be the choice.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the free agent listing I'm looking at here, they got Dahlman as a 4-star player, and then Bozeman is a 2-star player. So I mean, even with pass protection being a concern, certainly for Dahlman, I got to think he's a much better pass blocker than
Prospect.
Bozeman. I mean, that's gonna be a big fall off. But I
What
would
is
be
Ryan
totally fine
Kelly?
with Kelly. Yeah, I would
What
be
is
fine with Kelly.
is he 3-star, 4-star?
He is a 3. Yeah.
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 Yeah. I could
So,
see him. He's who I wanted to start the offseason.
mhm.
But I didn't know too much about Dahlman at the time. Um, but I like he's big, he's nasty. He's had some durability issues, so and so has Dahlman. Dahlman didn't finish; he broke his leg, I think. So there's all those question marks there. But yeah, I think it's safe to say that that's going to be one of our bigger free agent signings next week. Is one of those centers.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what I'm most curious about for sure, because then we move on to prepping for the draft. And one of the things about the two pickups in the last 2 days is the Bears certainly have a heck of a lot more freedom. I think
Oh yeah,
all of us expected the Bears to go O-line at number 10 overall. And now when you have brought in 2 high-level guards and possibly a top-tier free agent center next week, and you've plugged in 3 starters already. I mean, I would like to, I like Braxton Jones okay, but if you can get a top-tier left tackle in the draft, that's certainly going to be enticing. And I wouldn't blame them for that. But they do have this flexibility now at number 10 where perhaps, they could go best player overall. And so now we're looking at, would they actually look at Ashton Genty and drafting a running back at number 10? I think it's in play. You can look at edge rushers, you can look at defensive tackles. Still, they could still look at
offensive line.
offensive tackles. I mean, it's possible. There's a lot coming out of the combine about Will Campbell out of LSU, who's generally seen as the number one tackle in the draft, and his arm length measurements and whether he would fall, due to that. So I'll just read you the stats. So Will Campbell's arm length was 32 and 5/8 inches, which is that would be in the 7th percentile for offensive tackles, which has got some people thinking he might have to move to guard in the NFL due to that. Now, at the same time, if you look at Ben Johnson and the tackles that he had in Detroit, Sewell had 33 and a quarter inch arms, which is in the 18th percentile. So not much longer there. Taylor Decker, 34-inch long arms, 33rd percentile. And, if you look at what the Bears have right now, Braxton Jones over at left tackle, he's got 35 and 3/8 inch arms, and Amagaji was 36 and an eighth. So, Detroit, they get guys with shorter arms, but higher level players, so I'm not sure I'm as concerned as some people have been making it out with Will Campbell. I think if Will Campbell drops to number 10 because of this, the Bears are probably going to jump at drafting him. Don't you think?
I think it's a good chance. Yes. I think it really depends. Like you said, I think it gives us a lot more flexibility where they can do more BPA. I think if he's the BPA that drops to them, then yes. One of the other guys that could drop due to his combine measurables is one of my favorite players, and that's Mason Graham, the defensive tackle out of Michigan. Um, he supposedly played at about 315 pounds, came into the combine just under 300.
Hmm.
And he's got shorter arms, shorter hands, and only put up 24 reps of 225. And so there's a lot of chatter that he might slip. And if he does, if both of them were there, I have Mason Graham above Will Campbell. Personally, I think again, you look at the additions we just made, assuming we get a center next week, our offensive line looks absolutely set. And at that point, it becomes a luxury to get an offensive lineman.
Mhm.
Um, Meanwhile, if you watched our team like we did all last season, that defensive tackle depth was atrocious and is the reason we got bludgeoned every single week once Billings went down. Mason Graham is going to help that. He's going to help on rushing downs and passing downs with his penetration, his effort and energy, his technique, and I think he'll be a huge asset next to Jervon Dexter Sr. So I think it's really going to be, if those two guys are there, I think it's a win-win. I'm with you. I think Campbell can be a winner, can be a
Mhm.
stud. I also think, if best case scenario, Braxton Jones stays healthy, he takes another step forward, especially with Tooney next to him. We get Will Campbell. He can be the left tackle. He can be a guard. Uh, there's even talk about him maybe being a center. And I think he's got that sort of smarts and athleticism. He ran phenomenally. His testing was absolutely top notch.
Mhm.
One of four guys I think ever to be over 315 pounds and run a sub 5 second 40. Now, caveat is another one of the four guys is in the same draft class who is actually who jumped up ahead of him in my personal rankings for offensive linemen. That's Armand Mambo from Missouri. But um, Campbell, I think, is going to be a stud. And one of the other things I heard about him is he's, I think, one of only four LSU Tigers, I think at least in the last 50 years or more, to maybe it's only 20 years, but either way, only one of four to assume the starting left tackle role as a true freshman and keep that job his entire career there. So, and if you play as a freshman in the SEC and play well enough to continue to keep your job, that says something. And to me, his tape, his pedigree, his makeup, it overcompensates for that lack of measurements he's been doing his whole life. So I'm really excited about this draft. Like you said, it opens us up, and we'll see how it falls. But right now, I think Mason Graham would be my top choice, and I think he compares fairly well to Christian Wilkins, who's now with the Raiders. Wilkins was a former Clemson Tiger. Um, Wilkins had measured 6'3", 315. Mason Graham 6'3", 296, but he was more 315 during the year, supposedly. Wilkins 32.5-inch arms. Mason Graham 32-inch arms. Wilkins 9 3/4 hands. Mason Graham 9 1/8 hands. I think their play is similar. They're both disruptors. They're very active, nonstop motor, and I think that's a good comp. Um, Wilkins did put up 4 more reps at 225, but I think they're very, very similar players, and I would be thrilled with Mason Graham at 10 personally. But one of the interesting things about, again, all this flexibility, they could go edge as well. I think it's going to depend what they do in free agency. There's a lot of options they can go there. Do they go with a big splash signing at end, or do they go at D tackle? Both of those guys from Philly could be on our team next week. And if they do either one of those, I could absolutely see the other position getting addressed heavily in the draft. Then you have the whole Khalil Mack reunion. What are your
Mhm.
thoughts on that?
I was gonna bring that up. We'll get to that in a second. I want to finish up this topic real quick though, because
Okay,
I was
okay.
I was gonna ask you if you had any thoughts on, because you're talking about Mason Graham. So Graham is number 4 overall on Dane Brugler's top 100 on the Athletic.
Yeah.
And so like he might be there, but it depends. It's going to depend on what positions, start going early, obviously, but if there's any runs on certain positions. But we got Derek Harmon there. He's ranked number 19 overall at D tackle out of Oregon. I like Derek Harmon quite a bit personally. Like if Graham's gone, but he's there, I think he would be enticing too.
At 10?
Yeah.
Yeah, it would depend. I have my top 5 wish list for 10 right now.
Hmm.
Honestly, I would prefer they trade back and get more ammo. That's what I would prefer. But if we stay at 10, I have Mason Graham, Armand Membo, Will Campbell, Mikel Williams currently, and Tyler Warren, the tight end. Those are my five that I think I would really like if we're sitting there at 10.
Yeah.
And at some point I have some data if we want to talk about the types and body types of edges that Dennis Allen prefers, and if any one of these edges might fit in that. But yeah, so I like Harmon. I would like him more in a trade back scenario.
Yeah,
And I
that's
would,
what I was thinking is
yeah,
trading back
yeah,
probably with him. But
and
if
I
I
would
mean if they're big
love,
fans of him, I think they're trading back for sure.
yeah.
But
Well, it takes two to tango, and so I don't know if we're going to be able to. But if we can, I would like that, or even better, if we can get him in the second round, that'd be ideal.
yeah,
But you never know
yeah,
how that's going to play. But I do think that needs to get addressed with a premier asset, either top dog in free agency or a first or second round pick for sure.
yeah. So okay, let's talk about the Khalil Mack thing, since that's obviously a huge position of need. We did the over at Windy City Gridiron. We did the features recently on which positional players we wanted to see the Bears go after in free agency. And, we talked to, I think I wrote about Josh Sweat from Philly. And, despite not having the big double digit sack numbers, he's a solid player. Depending on the kind of contract he's commanding, I would certainly be making calls about Josh Sweat. But I personally, not as a key piece. And according to the reporting out there, if Mac has the reunion with Chicago, he's not expecting like uber top dollars here. I don't think, like the Bears made him it was like the highest paid defensive player of all time or something, wasn't he, when they signed him?
Yeah.
So I mean, he's been paid heavily by the Chicago Bears in the past, but if he wants to come in as a rotational piece at edge, he had a great year last year. If they can get him at an affordable price, I would love to see Khalil Mack come back to Chicago. Look, I got a Khalil Mack jersey, Brian. I'd love to get some more use out of that. It's been hanging in my closet the last couple of years, not getting any use. So I like the angle of getting Khalil Mack back. Of course, it's going to depend on numbers, but I mean, if it's an affordable deal and he just wants to come in and be part of helping turn this franchise back around, I think he's a great piece to rotate in at edge rusher.
Yeah, I'm with you. I would love the return of the Mac, man, and I would love to see that jersey on you in one of these episodes
I
next
almost
season.
wore it tonight. I
Yeah,
was thinking about it, but
no,
yeah.
that'd have been cool. Yeah, I fully agree. I think I think that gives us a little more flexibility.
Mm-hmm.
I think like we just talked about, Buckner. No, what's his name? The Oregon Harmon. Harmon is a guy I like, but he's not top 10. I think only Mason Graham is really top 10 there. Some have said Kenneth Grant, his Michigan teammate. I'm similar to him with Harmon. I think he's great player, going to be awesome. I wouldn't take him top 10, top 20, sure. But you get Khalil Mack in free agency, then you can address edge with one of our second round picks, with one of these guys. The kid from Landon Johnson, I think his name is. I can't remember exactly. Dude from Arkansas, has a prototypical body type, great athleticism, would be a great edge for us. But I really like both those Ohio State guys, and this comes from a Michigan fan myself. I think both Jack Sawyer and JT Tuamolu would be awesome to add next to Montez Sweat, behind and with Khalil Mack. That to me sounds great. Then you address defensive tackle heavy in free agency with like a Milton Williams. And I think you're cooking with gas. You've got a lot more flexibility in those first two rounds. And I love that. If Mack would come back at an affordable rate, we started something with him, and he needs to come back and finish it. And I think he would help us do that.
Yeah, I like that point. Let's finish it. Let's finish it, Khalil. Let's get back in the building. Let's do this.
Yeah, he's still never won a playoff game.
No, man. I when I started seeing the rumors that he was possibly interested in it, I was on board right away. Would love to see that dude come back. So,
oh yeah,
he doesn't have to be the centerpiece of the defense anymore, like he was before. I know people talk a lot about how his numbers dipped off so much, there at the end and everything, and he had some health issues too. I mean, it's a totally different situation now. 3-4 versus 4-3. We got Montez now on the other side, rotational piece coming in. I just really, really like the idea of Khalil Mack coming back if he's affordable,
Yeah,
of
no, I
course.
agree. And
But
I think
yeah.
a lot of people are forgetting in this fluster of moves we've had here, flurry of moves. Fluster, I'm thinking your snow blizzard. Flurry either way. But, they let go of DeMarcus Walker. He
Mm-hmm.
was our starting defensive end opposite Montez Sweat, making over $7 million a year this year.
Yeah.
And so they have to address it with starting caliber players. That's going to happen, and I expect free agency to be where it happens. I don't think although I would love to have the Sweat brothers back and forth, on either side. I think it's more economical to go for affordable Khalil Mack and then draft pick with one of your first 2 rounds at edge. But yeah, I'm with you. I would love Khalil Mack as well.
What do you think about this running back position? So, like, I mentioned the name, but we didn't talk too much about it. Would you be happy if they went with Ashton Genty if he's there?
So I would be conflicted. I
Yeah.
played running back. I
Mm-hmm.
love running back. I think it's the best, most athletic position on the field. But this is a stacked running back class, absolutely loaded. And I don't think it is a wise allocation of resources to get a running back in the top 10 and forego one of these guys that we've talked about, because you can get a complimentary, even a 1A to Swift's 1B in the second round, third round, even
Mm-hmm.
with one of these other guys that I feel like would really complement Swift well, that are going to be dynamic. So because of that, because of the fact that we could get an awesome player at running back later in the draft, just the next 2 rounds, I
Mm-hmm.
would say no, we should not do that. But the fan in me would absolutely love to see Ashton Genty taking a screen pass from Caleb Williams 85 yards to the house. I would love to see that. Bouncing off Green Bay Packers players on the way to a 50-yard touchdown run. Like I I would be thrilled to see it, and I think it would really help Caleb Williams, but ultimately I don't think it's a wise allocation of resources, so I would not be happy. And that's why if you caught this, like the one intriguing kind of dark horse in my top 5 is the tight end, Tyler Warren. I think I'm just fascinated to see what Ben Johnson could do with a Komet and Warren. Getting that 12 personnel where you have DJ and Rome out wide, Komet and Warren inside. You could put one of them fullback, move around. First, second, third down. Ben Johnson would have his playbook wide open with creative stuff never before seen. People keep referencing Gronk and Hernandez. This would be totally different. Neither one of those guys are like Hernandez. They're both more like Gronk, but they
Mm-hmm.
can both catch the ball.
Yeah.
Komet, his catch rate is ridiculously high, and he's a above average blocker, more like Gronk was as opposed to Hernandez. Warren is a dominant blocker, dominant after the catch. He'll even take carries. I think that would be really fascinating to see. And I think I think if we didn't have a creative offensive mind like Ben Johnson, I wouldn't think of it. But because we do now, that would really intrigue me. I would be happier with that at 10 than Ashton Genty.
Yeah. I mean, if they drafted him, I'm sure within a few hours I'd get pretty excited. Like if they think that this is the game breaking running back that I mean look what happened with Saquon with Philadelphia. If they think that he can have that kind of an effect on the offense, I won't blame them one bit, for taking it. If Ben Johnson thinks we got to have this guy, he's there, we're going now, like, all right,
Right.
let's do it.
Yeah.
That said, I'm an Iowa Hawkeyes fan. I love Caleb Johnson.
Yeah.
Would love to see Caleb Johnson on the Bears. I mean,
Yeah.
you look at what this guy did on
Yeah.
such an anemic offense. I mean, the Iowa Hawkeyes have not had much of a passing offense in years.
Years. Yeah.
The box was always stacked against this dude, and he still makes stuff happen.
Yeah.
Like he is a guy who can anticipate where the lanes are going to open up and just hit the spot and go.
Yeah.
He's a little bit bigger than Ashton, 6 foot versus 5'8". I like his size a lot. I would love this if they can get him in the second round. We got 2 picks in the second round, number 39, number 41 overall. If they're confident he's going to be there, like I wouldn't mind if they passed on Ashton and went with a different position of need, if they're sure that they could get Caleb Johnson, but if they passed on Ashton Jeanty, if he was actually there at 10, and then they also didn't get Caleb, I would be not happy. So
Well, I mean,
I would hope that they would be certain they could get him. Yeah.
yeah, I think there's a number of backs that would complement Swift similar to Caleb Johnson. I think,
Yeah.
Amari and Hampton, who I think is not going to fall out of the first round, but he is just as big and even faster. Um, he's elite. Quinshawn Judkins, who by all accounts had a really, really great combine and interviews, also ran faster than I thought, high to mid 4.4s, which was awesome at 220 pounds as well. And then Cam Scattaboo. I would love that kid,
Mm-hmm.
in one of the later rounds, maybe third round for Scat. Um, but that's what I'm saying. Like that right there is 4 guys that if they're available in the second or third round, that's extra talent in the first and second we could be adding to our team around a running back who I think would be almost as dynamic with Ben Johnson calling plays. With that offense with Caleb Williams. So, yeah, loaded running back class. But like you said, man, if they get Ashton Jeanty, I'll probably get an Ashton Jeanty jersey. Like I would love it. He is an absolute beast. And
Yeah.
you said he's smaller, but bro, he's like 5'8", 215 as
Yeah.
opposed to 6', 220. So he's actually bigger from a density standpoint.
Yeah.
He's definitely no snowflake. That guy is a snowball. He will run over anybody. He bounces off guys, runs over guys. I love him. He reminds me a lot of Maurice Jones-Drew coming out. And yeah, but anyway, I'm stoked about the running backs. I just hope we don't go running back in free agency. That's the one thing I hope we don't do. Get one of these
Same.
young studs coming out and
Mm-hmm.
and let them kind of grow with Caleb and be the feature of this offense with Caleb. And that's what I would love. And I hope we do that. I'll be upset if we don't, to your point. Like if we miss Jeanty and we don't get one of these young backs and we go with like a Javonte Williams or Najee Harris or something like that, I'll be pissed.
Yeah. Same.
But hopefully, there's a good chance we won't do that. So we'll see.
Yeah. So yeah, Brugler, the Athletics draft analyst, he puts out the Beast every year. He's one of the top draft analysts. He's got Jeanty at number 5 overall player in the draft. He's got Caleb Johnson at number 35. He has him as the second highest running back.
Okay.
And then Hampton is 36th overall, third highest running back out of North Carolina. Henderson out of Ohio State, he has as the 49th best player in the draft. Then he's got Jordan James out of Oregon. So yeah, I mean, Caleb. I mean, I don't know, man. I know a lot of people really like Caleb Johnson, but I think he'll probably be there in the second.
Oh yeah,
I'm not a draft guru by any means, but I mean, I think he's a possibility for sure there at 39-41. So
where's Judkins at in that list?
Oh, let me see.
If he's after Jordan James, that's crazy.
Yep, you got Jordan James at 62 overall, and then Judkins at 70 overall. Sampson out of Tennessee, 80 overall. Harvey out of UCF at 95 overall. This is just his top
Harvey.
100, top 100 players. So, yeah,
Harvey is a stud, man. He was running really well on that combine. He's a great player from UCF. He's one of the best backs to come out of UCF since me.
Just gonna say, it's Brian Oranchuk. There you go.
They're all better. They were all better.
5'7", 207. He's a bowling ball too.
Oh, he's a beast. Yeah, he's a beast.
So yeah, let's see what else we got here. Something else I was gonna ask you on the running backs, and I lost my train of thought, but there was one other name I didn't throw out on the edge rushers that I wanted to get your take on. And this has been out there because of the Saints connection, obviously, with Dennis Allen. What do you think about Chase Young, getting him on like a 1-year deal at edge? If they could do something like that, just like a prove it deal.
I would be, again, if they kind of do a similar thing as we were talking with Khalil, where they bring him in affordable deal and they draft somebody, I'd be okay with it. I'm not a huge Chase Young fan. There are a number of guys I think I'd prefer over Chase Young. Um, you talk about the Dennis Allen connection. Dennis Allen was a part of the. He was a defensive coordinator for the Saints when they drafted Marcus Davenport. And Ben Johnson was with the Lions last year when Marcus Davenport was on the team. Granted, he was injured for most of the year, but Marcus Davenport's a guy I think could come super cheap and hold down that spot, similar to a DeMarcus Walker, where we'd still have to get a young rusher. But I think I might rather Davenport. I'd want Khalil Mack. I think I'd take Davenport ahead of Chase Young, but maybe not if he's fully healthy. After those gruesome injuries, and he played all last year, so he looked like it. I could see that being something. I wouldn't be upset with it, to put it that way, as long as we addressed edge early in the draft.
Yeah. Hey, we got someone in our chat room drinking with us finally. Beckton Carpenter, Uncle Nearest whiskey. That is a solid choice. Do you know about the history of Uncle Nearest, Brian?
I think I heard it one time. Isn't that like the oldest whiskey distillery? Isn't he like the oldest?
Well, so like Uncle Nearest he was the enslaved man, I believe, who taught Jack Daniel how to make whiskey.
Okay,
So
that's right.
That's where Jack Daniel got his knowledge from. I
Nice.
think it was a couple of years ago on like New Year's Eve. I saw a special on this, and I went out and bought the whiskey immediately.
Oh, nice.
It's good stuff. It's good.
Yeah,
It's solid.
I've had it. Yeah,
yeah. I got to break out the whiskey some week on here.
Yeah, we will.
Yeah, we will, especially next year if we start winning, Brian.
Yeah,
be a lot more fun.
Absolutely.
Oh man, yeah. I don't know. We've covered a lot of ground. I feel like a lot of this now is we're kind of getting into what could happen depending on next week. Next week and the week after is really going to clear up so much of our draft strategy, because we got to see what we do in free agency.
Right.
Just absolutely fascinated about what could happen with the center position. That is key to me right now, because you go into that draft and you have signed 3 big time, or traded for and signed 3 big time O linemen and plugged all those holes in one off season. I like getting depth. I like still drafting some linemen, obviously, but I think then you gotta start looking at D line. You got to look at edge rusher. You got to look at tackle. To your point, definitely running back early. Tight end, another position in need. So it's gonna get really interesting. I do like how Ryan Poles has opened up all this flexibility for the team, though, and it certainly made number 10 overall a lot more intriguing going into the draft, I think now.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and I mean, because of that, 39 and 41 as well. How's that going to look? And you talk about D tackle. There's different types of D tackle. Milton Williams is more of a 3-tech pass rushing D tackle, but we need help run stopping. And so there are a number of guys in free agency I expect us to go after at reasonable deals to be kind of depth behind Billings. David Onyemata, who was drafted by DA Dennis Allen in 2016. Sebastian Joseph Day, Poona Ford. These guys are solid run stoppers, depth pieces. I expect us to come away with one of them. And then receiver. We need some depth at receiver and some speed.
I think receiver, big time.
Tim Patrick, I think, is a really logical choice. He knows Ben Johnson well. He's a smart guy, big body, good route runner. And then I'm really high on Tutu Atwell from the Rams. He's more of a speed guy. I think is going to come real cheap. This is a inundated wide receiver class, and DK Metcalf's about to get traded too, and Tyler Lockett just got released, and Devontae Adams. So these guys are going to come really, really affordable, and I think those two coming in is a real possibility too. Or Tim Patrick and another speed type of player would make a lot of sense. I expect those to happen, and again, we'll have a lot more flexibility come draft time. But yeah, a lot of what ifs next week, man. It's going to be exciting. I'm real eager to see what happens. I think Monday is the legal tampering. Is that right?
Yes, I believe that's right. Yeah. I had the calendar pulled up in one of my many tabs earlier, and I closed it, I think. Shoot, but Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's right. So we should start hearing more on Monday. But yeah, to your point, and they asked Ben Johnson about that this offseason, is can they really flip an offensive line to become a strength in one offseason?
Mhm.
And he was very adamant in his yes. And the Panthers did it last year, and they had the polls addressed, they had the resources to do just that this offseason. And I love the way he's been flexible in doing that. And I anticipate a center is absolutely signed. And yeah, all three, above average to really, really good options on the interior of our offensive line are going to be new from last year. And Caleb Williams has got to be stoked about that.
Yeah. Yeah, it'll be vastly improved compared to last year, no question about it. Yeah, Monday is when the legal tampering 2-day period starts, and then Wednesday at 4 p.m. Eastern time, the free agency signing period begins. So things are going to be real interesting next week. We'll be back in the next couple of weeks to talk about it all coming out of free agency and then getting ready for the draft. So we will do these periodic Bears over beers throughout the off season, always on Wednesday nights. So stay tuned for that. Make sure you're subbed to the channel here if you're watching on YouTube for sure, and like this video while you're here. We would appreciate it. But if you're on the podcast feed, of course, too, rate the whole Second City Gridiron channel 5 stars. Make sure you're subscribed wherever you get your podcasts. All kinds of great stuff going up in the off season from the crew here at Second City Gridiron all the time. Mason West is doing great stuff. Of course, Bill Zimmerman made headlines all across the league with his great interview of Ben Johnson's agent several weeks ago. That was a great listen. Taylor Dowell, she's always doing great stuff. And of course, Lester and JB, I think they got a show coming next week. So stay tuned to Second City Gridiron, your source for all things Chicago Bears. We appreciate everyone who joined us live tonight. If you're on the podcast feed, check us out live sometime. It's a lot of fun. Get involved in this chat room. Appreciate your support, everybody. And that's all I got. Brian, any closing thoughts?
No, bear down. Enjoy this ride. I think it's going to be, we ended the season on a good note,
Mm-hmm.
and it's carrying on. So let's continue this and bear down, everybody.
Absolutely. All right, everybody. Have a good rest of your week, and we will talk to you next time. Go Bears.
Bears.